Data Voyagers.
Hello, Data Voyagers. This is the sixth episode of the Data Voyagers podcast, navigating the stories behind numbers. I am Igor Alcantara. Oi, pessoal. And I have here with me my co host, Angelica Gledas.
From the Netherlands. Hello.
Okay, so we have a great episode for you today. We'll talk about language in a way that people is not actually thinking about it. But before we start the episode, I'd just like to remind people to subscribe to Data Voyagers podcast, whatever you listen to your podcast, either Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify. Go there and make sure you click either follow or subscribe. And if you like us, please rate us 5-star. These two actions help us a lot and help the podcast to reach a larger audience. And also invite your friends and colleagues and family to also follow us and listen to our podcast. So basically, spread the word. So today we are talking about language-centric analytics, which is an interesting term that we'll describe right now. And as usual, actually, there's something that started naturally. We have some pop culture reference that help us to navigate through the topic, gives a little bit of storytelling, is a little bit of analogy and metaphor to what we're talking about. And we thought about the perfect one for these is a classic from Stanley Kubrick, great English director, is a 2001 A Space Odyssey. And if you do not remember the movie, it's not a spoiler. This is a movie from the 60s, so it's not a spoiler. It's an old movie. But anyway, and actually there's a movie that I used to use a lot in classes when I was a professor at university. And basically it's an idea. It shows like the when humanity developed their first tools and then goes to the future, where a monolith is found in the moon, and they send like a spacecraft to go there and investigate and see what's going on. But turns out the AI that controls the spacecraft, HAL 9000, basically becomes conscious and decides, well, I'm not playing along anymore, and that's that's as much as I can explain about this movie without giving more spoilers. But anyway, there was one scene of this movie that I reference a lot, which is it's so important that the scene actually has a name. It's called Dawn of Man. Man as in humankind. It was a little sexist there when they created the title, but anyway, that's a very classic scene. If you don't remember, just go after you watch the episode. Just go YouTube and just search for the Dawn of Man, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Then you see the scene. It has the classic soundtrack of the movie, but basically it starts with some of our ancestors. I think it's probably the Australopithecus, actually the Homo habilis, probably the Homo habilis. Basically, one of them is playing with a bone, like an animal bone, and then he start like hitting all the bones, and he's starting developing like abstract thought. And you start imagining, oh, I can use this bone as a tool. I can use this bone as something that I can hunt with, that I can hurt others, and all of that. And he actually uses, and that little group, the little tribe, then gets an advantage. So that shows which would very probable way how the first two humanity, even before Homo sapiens, developed. And then he throws the bones to the air, and then there was like a transition, and he shows the spacecraft in the space. So basically showing the transition from the first two, the human developed, to the last one, which is not space exploration, but in the mind of the writers of actually the book that inspired the movie, it's AI. So a lot of people believe conscious AI is the last tool that humanity will develop, because after that, we do not developing something like human, like it's an AI human hybrid first, and then AI will develop things for us. So we will basically give that privilege or that task to AI. And on that journey, we have something that is critical to us, which is language, any kind of language. So that's why I think this analogy with this movie is perfect for this episode.
Yeah.
All right.
As we see, of course, and what we noticed recently when we were in Orlando watching the amazing shows given on stage about using AI agents growing more into agentic AI, um, we see actually the world of structured data and unstructured data coming closer to each other, right? And we know that NLP, so natural language processing, is here, but I think that language-centric analysis is a new approach. And can you maybe elaborate a little bit on this, Igor?
Yes. So we do have the tools already, and they will develop. But what is the idea of language-centric analytics, and what is the new approach that we're talking about? It's not just another. It's just not another way to. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just another tool that we have at our disposal. It changes, if you use correctly, the whole perspective. So we need to understand like the three separate words of what is language, centric, and analytics. So of course we know what is analytics. We know what is language, and actually we have different types of languages. Some people argue that math is a language, and SQL is a language. There's all the type of language. What we're talking about here is natural language that humans use to communicate throughout history. So the idea is to put that language in the center of the analytics. It's not an extra thing. It's not a cool thing only, but you can think of as the like the niche thing. And that means that the that means that people will then use language as the main component of their analytics. And that, we'll discuss those in the episode that affects like developers, business users, affects like everything.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, and I'm able to get some kind of picture in my head, right? Like I know
Mhm.
NLP, and I know that we can ask amazing questions to all kinds of models, right? But I think we should dive a little bit deeper into the separate elements that we are talking about, right? Language, centrics, analytics. So I think it's good to start with the centric element of this super interesting approach, because it's a total new way of thinking, right?
Yes. So when you think about centric and language, what we're thinking about, let me actually tell you something that is language, but is not centric. So let's say you have a co-pilot feature, or you have like something that you add to your dashboards, but then you start your development of your analytics applications, let's say your click applications, um, just the way you used to do before. So you do your you prepare your data thinking about data modules, thinking about it and all of that aspect, not thinking about language first. And then you develop a dashboard. So you think first in terms of data visualization, you think first in terms of the DAR concept and all of that, but you don't think at language as the first concept. And then you add language, like you do a Copilot, or you integrate with Click Answers or other tools as an add-on, as a great thing, which is great, by the way, but that's not language centric. Language centric is the other way. You start with the language. So you start by defining, okay, what is the language? And what I'm saying, language is not like English, Portuguese, Dutch. And when I'm saying language is like, what are like business terminology? What is the tone that I'm using? What kind of language interfaces do I have? Is only text? Is voice? What kind of means of communication? It's just a computer. It's also a mobile device. Do we incorporate WhatsApp, Alexa, etc.? So then that's the initial thought, and then you design the solution around it. So that's the concept of being centric. And which is interesting because language is natural to us humans because we speak since we're very little. That's our main way of communicating to one another, to interact, to socialize, to understand. Even when we're by ourselves, when you're thinking, when you're dreaming, you're doing that in terms of languages. um, so that is natural. Everything else you need to learn. A mouse is not natural. A pie chart is definitely not natural. A language is natural. So the idea is um, making analytics more accessible to people through
In
language.
language.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you, I think, believe you explained to me that so if we would refer it to the analytical word, a user could start by going to the business term glossary, find all resources, apps, and visualization, machine learning models, reports, and simply ask for all elements that are associated with the term revenue in a sales dashboard, for example, or a financial dashboard. That is what you mean, right?
Exactly. Actually, that's a good
So
example. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And then, so as I understand, then a business glossary is the central element of everything that holds all metadata of business terms given to the data elements, the facts, the calculations, and so on. And with algorithms and logic, it will learn what tends to belong to each other, like using a large language model or a RAG model or other algorithmic elements. Um, and then we go in somewhere and then we ask verbally a question like, okay, can you give me everything related to revenue?
Mhm.
Is that the idea? Is that the
Yes,
concept?
I mean, that's the direction we go into. I mean, we don't have all the tools in place integrated yet. At Click Connect, and it was announced like the agentic AI for Click, which will be available in the near future. But you can start in a much
Yeah,
simpler way. And actually, I'm already doing this in some of the implementations I'm working with. Of course, you need to talk to the customer. If the customer gets the idea and agrees, it's actually it's working pretty great. Which is, you talk to the customer and say, "Can we try to apply this concept? And let's try small before applying using any AI. Let's try small. Let's try, for example, with business glossary. Like Click has the glossary, which is available in all licenses. So let's start by defining your business glossaries, and then once we develop the like the apps and the other resources, then we can link them to specific terms. Then it helped increase adoption. When we train the users, let's start with the glossary first. That's the first thing that we should start end users. So let's say I'm a user that I work with, for example, I don't know, revenue, or I'm study revenue. That's the thing I do. Or let's look, this hospital is easy example for me. I'm working in a hospital, and I work with hospital readmissions. That's the one of the functions that I perform. So I, instead of going to the catalog and finding an app that has that information, I don't do that. I'll go to the glossary, and then I'll get the terms that I'm working with. Well, I'm working readmission, go to readmission. Oh, I have three apps that talks about readmission. And then from there, so I start with the glossary, and then I go to the apps. It
yeah,
also it avoids a lot of confusion that happens in a lot of companies. I remember there was a customer I worked years ago, and was a university with different schools, and they have like this term called households, and for different schools mean different things. It households at the moment, households
yeah,
when the specific fundraising was a pledge, or things like that, and then we had to define the right terminology and communicate, say, listen, this is like, let's normalize, let's centralize this terminology, etc. So start with that.
yeah,
So that's a
yeah.
different approach, and then we
I
can
love the
add
idea.
AI on top of
Yeah.
that.
And I think what you just mentioned about, the glossary that Click holds in their environment with every license that there is, um, we can even add the apps where all things are. So if we, if we, what if there would be an ability, to log to the apps, to the visualizations, to the um, predict elements, to the click answers elements, you will have that concept of the centric language model, right? And that's, I think, very important. And as a teacher that and a trainer that trains companies all over the world, I always talk about one common business language, because we need to understand each other to achieve good things, right? If we do not speak the same business language, we would never reach some kind of goal, because various departments, various um, jargon things, and so on. So I think it's very important. And now, as I see the relation of this new approach, I can see that this is the new evolution of analytics. So where not only analytics is significant, it's a significant part of this concept, but as well the usage of structured and unstructured data.
Yes,
Right?
yes, and also this kind of forces everyone in the project, business users and developers and all the stakeholders and project managers to think business
Exactly.
first, because
The whole.
as a whole, and then get an agreement. And I mean, people who listen to this, who have been involved in different projects, they'll probably have the same experience. This is not straightforward. We go to, I have a recent project where there was a simple term like location. It was a manufacturing company. Location. What does it mean? Well, they have different meanings for location. They have different codes for location. And some people call location something, some people call location something else. And then it was so confusing. So we had to come in an agreement. Okay, how will we call on this? What is actually this and that? And so and so when you have that approach, then you're already having the conversation at the beginning. So we having business conversation at the beginning. So it also helps on that way.
Yeah, and that's so important that we reach that one state of one common business language that has the consensus of everybody, right? That when we talk about an invoice, that means this. When we talk about location, it means this. When we talk about a cell, it means this. And that is very, very important. Well, great. So, and then you talked about dashboard centric, report centric, query centric. So give me some updates, because
Yes.
my mind is whirling now.
Yeah. So when we say language-centered analytics, it's not that the order, like, it's not that we retire dashboard. We're not doing dashboards anymore. That's not what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is an addition, is a different approach, is a different way to see things. It's not replacing necessarily what we have, but it's just another way of doing things that you can add on top of it or combine different things. So we have different centric types of analytics. Like one is still very popular and will be popular for a long time for many reasons, because it has their use case, is the report centric analytics. They're specific, not only companies, but sometimes a company can have multiple ways. But let's say there is a specific part of the company that they need reports. They working with legal or accounting or something. They need an actual report. And like the whole department or this whole function is run. It's not run by reports, but it's empowered by reports. So that's what I call report centric analytics. So when we doing your data gathering, data transformation, all of that, you're thinking as the report that will be produced at the end of the day. So bring in the columns they need for the report, the transformation they need for the report, and so on. Then we have query centric. That is a way more complicated one, because it requires very advanced technical skills. It's the analytics where you querying the data in order to get your answers. How much do I need to produce in order to fulfill my orders in next week? So using a query to investigate that. That's one of the most time-consuming ones and less intuitive, because SQL, I mean, we work with this and it's kind of it's fluent to us, but it's not natural. It took us many years, experience and projects to actually understand that. We don't. I mean, if we do, please see some help, because you need it, because we don't talk in SQL. Um, it's not a language people use. It's non-natural, but it is important in some industries, in some aspects. And then we have the dashboard centric analytics, which is when we think in BI, we think in dashboard centric. It's like the dashboard is the star, is we design based on dashboard. So we do star schemas, we do this and that, aggregating that stuff, thinking about the dashboard we develop. So that's why it's a centric. So the proposed here is, well, let's do also centric. But again, it's not one replacing the other. In the same company, depending on who consuming the analytics, you might have all of them. So for some people, they're more report centric people. For like C-level people, they don't go to like the tenant and open an app and say, they usually don't do that. If your
Yeah.
C-level, like if your executives do that, you're lucky, because most of the time they ask someone to send them something, or they call someone and ask, oh, what is
A
this?
report.
If you add
Yeah.
language, and if you add a capability that can interact through language, then they can get the answers themselves, because instead of asking a person, they can ask the tool, the platform, which will be the same to them. They'll have the
Yeah.
answer
But do you
faster.
actually? Yeah. But do you actually think, Igor, that because that's something that is in every company where I work. We have some visionaries. They use an iPad to look at information about their personnel, about their finance, about everything. But most, I think, 90% of leaders, they will ask the question to somebody else, deliver me a report with insight in this, and then they go to the environment, whatever they use, and make a report of it and send it to the boss in this case. Do you think actually there will be a change if we use it in this language centric approach, that it would change? Do you think so? Do you think we have the ability to change, or that people have the
Well,
ability to change?
it's a cultural change. I think it will. Of course, you always have the people
Yeah.
that are skeptical about it, or
Mm.
hesitant. Yeah, I mean, always we'll always have these people. But but still, there's still people that. What are the three things that we know for sure in life? Um, life, I'm sorry, death, taxes, and the usual ask to export to Excel. So you don't need to export to Excel. You have everything in your hands in your Click
Yeah.
app, or whatever analytics you use. But still, some people they didn't adapt. They needed that. It gives them comfort, which is okay. But the world is changing. Some people adapt faster. Some people take longer to adapt. But I think it's a natural thing. It's a natural direction.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I like the way things are going now. When you look at it from a central business language point of view, we have, of course, talent and all the changes and all the elements in there that we can change data quality, that we can make the measurements. Also think of our metadata layer, so technical, process, whatever, but also the element that flows into the business side, which in which we have the the business model language element, the glossary element of ClickSense. And I remember I did a webinar when it was just launched, how to approach this, and I think that that is, I think, the basis of everything to actually change into that natural language central element, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And as I said before, even before we have the natural language, just thinking about business glossaries before, and then incorporating that as central piece, it just do it a POC internally, get a small project and try that and see how that will actually affect. Some people might think, well, the first or two project, it might take longer at the beginning because we kind of defining these or that. But then you actually, you invest in time, because then you gain in that time down the road, and you have a better product. And at the end of the day, the biggest metric of success of any analytics implementation is adoption, and I think this drives higher adoption. Yeah,
That's it.
if you do that,
Yeah.
the most
Yeah.
amazing dashboard that nobody uses is useless.
And then if we look at that language perspective and large language models, we had so many systems in the past, and I know you know a lot about them. So can you take us back a little bit in history? where we have the dialogues and the large language models and the
Yeah, so
successes?
actually, this is a interesting thing because I think it is important to for people to understand that it didn't start today. So the study of language and dialogues in computing started like in the 1940s, and then we have in the 1968 what the Space Odyssey movie was launched. A lot of things, futuristic things that now are reality, were envisioned on that movie, and the book that inspired the movie. And then in 1970s, a sequel became popular, was launched and became popular. And then we have like the query, centric analytics, and then the 1990s. I mean, we know like 1993 is when Click was founded, like dashboards and BI started to become popular. Now, in the 2020s, especially after 2017, when the attention paper was published, which, by the way, I discussed a little bit more in our data in the video in our Data Voyages YouTube channel. Then natural language process became way more advanced with the advantage of transformers and LLMs, etc. And now we can use these two to change the way analytics works. Now, Angelica,
Yeah.
we were talking like offline before we started recording about an article you wrote on LinkedIn that actually reflects a little bit on this. So, can you mind reflecting on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that is funny because we were preparing, of course, for this podcast, and this article is already for a few years ago. It's called "Back to the Future." You can find it on my LinkedIn profile. Maybe Igor can add the link to the article in the documentation around the podcast.
Absolutely.
And at the end of my article, it was my journey, how I started working with data from static lists, coming to new tools and so on, and finding the way to augmented intelligence and so on. And I wrote in at the end of that article, I wrote the following: when I was in the US, I went to the Star Wars virtual show from the Void. Right, I think you did it too, and that was so amazing, right? Because we had a pack on our back, we had the guns, the mask, the helmet, and we were in a Star Wars environment. And after that, I started dreaming, walking with my virtual glasses, online glasses around in a virtual data storage. And then looking at the tables that were in my data storage and getting a table and connecting it with another just by doing that. And without program, because it's done for me, or just by asking it to connect it to another table in language, right? And then automatically there will be graphs generated for me based on the skill set that I have, right? Because we have a variety of skills, maturity in the usage of data. And um, so I don't have to think anymore as a designer about designing effects. I just build a lot of things in the algorithms, and then I get the ones that I can use in my maturity. I can do it on my phone, on my tablet, on my with the glasses on, just walking around in that data environment, and everything is virtual reality, like the Avatar uh, Pandora ride that we did recently in Disney's Animal Kingdom. So I'm really loving those insights, Igor. Do you have more to talk about when it comes to this
Yeah, just
language centric
just one
analytics?
thing is about the theory of language itself. I think it is important, and there are many theories because we want to keep this episode short, so we'll just discuss one of them, which is one that I really like is the Shepard-Worth hypothesis. That basically it's a linguistic study or proposition or theory, I might say, that basically it says the structure of language and the language that you speak and how well you speak a language actually shapes your perception, your cognition, your worldview. It shows that tool is not only language is not only a tool that we use to express thoughts and to communicate, but also shapes how people think and experience reality. I'll give you a very simple example. We could not see color blue for a biggest part or in our history. Like there's no mention of color blue in old books. Like if you go to the Odyssey and like those old books, there's no mention to blue, and things that now we understand as blue, they would describe it with other colors like green or white or black. But then once we started seeing things, that we started describing them with different words because of influences of different language that were kind of isolated, and then we started interacting with them. Then we started actually seeing things with a different color. That actually studies that, for example, Slavic languages. Some of them, they have multiple words for the color blue, and so they did it like tests and help people identify different shades of blue if they could actually identify them as different shades, and they had a much higher score than people like native English speakers would have, like less words that represent color blue, or like the spectrum in what we consider blue.
And that's funny, right, Igor? Because try to explain to a blind person what the color rose or pink or yellow would look like, because we cannot explain it like, oh, it's the sun. But the sun is warm, but can that define the color
Yes,
yellow of the sun?
exactly.
It's very difficult, I think, that, and that's the what the theory holds, right?
Exactly, and so the words matter. And why is this important to this language centric? Well, SQL, if you're using SQL to talk to data, to investigate data, then you are very limited because that's not natural. You need to like learn. There's like a level of study, a level of expertise that is required. So it kind of limits what you can do and how you see data, the insights that you can get. If you're using language, which is something natural, you might get insight. If we just look at the data, you'll not be able to. There's also possible with data visualization. Data visualization, another step that is better than like the natural, just using not natural, the old like just querying based. Um, but then language is on top of that. So it shapes not only how you see the word, but if you use language analytics, it shapes the way you see analytics. You get more insights, you're more productive, you're ahead of your competition.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. So, and to be honest, we have already some practical examples in our world, like the Insight Advisor from Click, the platform that we can use. There are many, many ways to use it. What I believe is that people really should learn how to use Insight Advisor to ask questions about, but also get ideas what to visualize and how to visualize. We have the glossary. In I think the basis of everything, where we I believe also can link to apps that we use, and in the apps we can add definitions as well to get that common language, right? But also click answers. I know you tested it a lot, click answers. I did. We defined, I think, about 45 use cases, how we can use analytical values in combination, and to use then also the click answers model. um, I use it, for example, in my lessons at the university where I teach. I made 4 knowledge bases, and in 4 knowledge bases there are articles, books, and my materials. Right, some even my recordings are in there, but that doesn't work that well yet. Um, but I think that is the basis of everything, right? To start around with the elements that we have now. I know it has not the link that it's completely integrated, but I know we will get there. And then we have another example of Brian Booten. He's from the UK. He will be hopefully one of our guests in the near future. So, Brian, if you listen to this, we need you on our show because you have something which represents uh, language centric analytics, because he has WhatsApp for Click, right? We can ask a question about how is our sales doing, or we get a warning. Take care, your KPI is dropping, you should take care of it. So all those things are in his solution. And well, if you want to know more about it, go to www.dataglowit.com. That's the website of Brian Booden. And he's an amazing guy that developed this amazing project. And he's also one of the hosts of the Data Mix, which is also a podcast series. So, Igor, I think you had also another example that we can discuss in this section,
Yeah,
right?
so at IBC Global, we in our like we have like a like innovation lab, innovation initiatives. So we're also researching cool things, and it's actually a privilege because the company allow us to do that and has like it's an actual initiative. And we do have we were able to integrate Click with Alexa. So we actually create a product called Ask IPC Global. It's not only language centric. You can see you can like have alerts set up in your Alexa, and you have your Alexa. I have like all of us. We have like an Alexa in our desks. I also have one at home, one at the office, and I see dashboard alerts and things like that. And I see the charts, but I can talk about it. So I can
Yeah.
enable applications to be accessible through that to that Click applications, and I can ask questions. What is the earliest renewal that I need to contact a customer about it? And I ask that in natural language to Alexa, and then he accesses the application and it gives me the answer and shows me the
Yeah.
charts in the Alexa device. That's another example. We're thinking about maybe it's a little bit spoiler here. We're thinking, let's do it in cars that have like that kind of capability to have a screen. Let's show in like alerts and things in the car. So you're driving and you're showing like your task failed, something like that. And then you can, through language, say, okay, rerun the task or send email to someone through language. So
Yeah.
that's the concept things we're
So,
researching is pretty good. So the future is amazing. So embrace it.
yeah, I think so too. And language, I think, is the common denominator that can help us in achieving goals for organization, but also on a personal level, right? To grow. So thanks again for today, Igor. I really enjoyed this discussion, and we should continue with it because I don't think it is ready. It's finished yet. There are many concepts whirling in my mind at the moment that I think, whoa, this is something amazing.
Yeah,
So
it's always a pleasure, Angelica, and I'll invite our listeners to, let's keep the discussion going. Share the episode, tag us on the comments and stuff, and let's keep the discussion going. Yeah, I'll love
yeah,
to interact with our listeners.
put comments in, right? So we can discuss them as well and find out and help you guys to understand this concept that is really growing. And I think this actually language centric analysis or analytics is our future. That's what I'm 100%
Yeah,
sure of.
and just to end, another thing that I see in the future of the listeners is to following us. So you'll be notified
Yeah,
in every single episode when it's released, and you're helping our statistics, you're helping spreading the episode, our podcast, to a larger audience. All right, Angelica, thank you very
yeah.
much. Thank you everyone who is listening to this.
And thank you, our sponsor,
Thank you, our sponsor,
IPC
IPC
Global.
Global. If you want to see how IPC Global can help you in the language center analytics, Word, and more, contact us at ipc-global.com. See everyone next time. Ciao, pessoal.
Bye bye. Doei. Tot ziens.
Data